It was 2:30 a.m. when a small drone, silent, black and deadly ordinary, hovered over a maximum security prison yard. Moments later, a bundle was released from its belly, drifting down between the fences. Inside that package were not toys, not clothes, but cell phones, methamphetamine, and pills. By dawn, dozens of inmates were quietly passing those phones from hand to hand. Within hours, secret deals had been made, money transferred, and the guards still had no clue. The prison had turned, not into a fortress, but into a dark marketplace. And when the first text message pinged on one of those hidden phones, everything changed. But how did those phones and drugs even get over the high prison walls? Who risked so much to smuggle them in, and why? The truth is darker and far more organized than anyone could imagine. Let me take you back a few weeks before that drone arrival. There was a man on the outside, call him Mark, who once served time in a federal prison. After his release, he found himself cut off from his old contacts, old money, and old life. But he also had friends still locked up. And those friends had a demand: phones. Not just for a call home, but to coordinate drug deals, extortion, orders, and communication with the outside world. Mark realized there was a huge opportunity. Phones in prison were like gold, rare, forbidden, and worth thousands inside. And drugs? Even more valuable. He met with two accomplices, DJ and Lee. These guys bought a high-powered drone, rigged to carry payloads up to 2 pounds. Over weeks they watched the prison, shift changes, guard patrols, camera blind spots, when the lights went off outside and the yard lights dimmed. Then, on a warm summer night, they were ready. In a car parked about 100 yards from the prison fence, DJ carefully loaded the drone. Tightly wrapped inside waterproof plastic, a bundle of meth, some pills, and 2 flip cell phones. They turned off the vehicle lights, started the drone, and watched it rise. For a moment that felt like forever, the drone drifted over the prison wall, glided above the yard lights, and dropped its cargo. Then it vanished into the darkness just as silently. Inside, 2 inmates, already watching the spot where the package would land, sprinted, scooped up the bundle, and dissolved into the shadows. No alarms. No guards. No CCTV alert. By morning, the contraband was already circulating. A phone went for more than $1,200 in prison currency. Drugs were broken into small deals and sold quietly. Soon, the prison had its own underground network: deals, messages, threats, transactions. That night, when the first call went out to the outside, words passed between a locked cell and a free world, the real crime began. Once inside, the contraband didn't just stay in the hands of a few, it spread. Phones got rented out. Drugs moved from one cell block to another. Some prisoners used the phones to reach gang members outside. They coordinated shipments of pills and meth, collected payments through prepaid card apps, and funneled money back, making the jail itself part of a wider trafficking network. Sometimes, they didn't even need drones. Other inmates had help from the staff, corrupt guards or outside contractors. Phones, drugs, even tobacco, hidden in lunchboxes, inside documents, sometimes even smuggled past scanners. Hidden compartments in deliveries, packages disguised as legal mail, or friendly visits turned into drop-offs. Even when prisons tightened their security, more patrols, stricter searches, contraband still found its way in. Guards who felt underpaid or threatened were bribed. Packages landed in recreation yards at night. Phone calls from hidden devices organized deals. Money flowed. Secrets spread. And the prisoners? They weren't just sitting and waiting. They were building a black market, a shadow economy, one built on fear, addiction, and power. It all came to a head one night when another drone, this time bigger, more loaded, dropped a heavy package over the yard. It wasn't just phones and pills. Hidden inside was a small bottle of fentanyl tablets, plus multiple phones, SIM cards, and even components for weapons. A fight broke out soon after, 2 cell blocks colliding over turf, debts, and drugs. Screams, shouts. Guards rushed in. By morning, 5 inmates were found overdosed. 2 more hospitalized. The phones? Gone. Weapons? Not yet recovered. The prison turned chaotic. Investigations began. Some guards were questioned, but no one spoke. The outside drug ring went silent. Families of prisoners woke to black market ledger entries, threats, and chaos. And the bigger question hung in the air: if a single drone drop caused that level of destruction, how many more had happened, undetected? How many more phones, drugs, secrets, or weapons had already made it inside? Because once contraband gets in, you're no longer dealing with one inmate or one shipment. You're dealing with a system, a slush pit of secrets, danger, and corruption. The morning after the violent clash, the entire prison went into lockdown. Sirens wailed at sunrise, metal doors slammed shut, and every inmate was ordered to stand by their bunks. No movement. No yard time. No phones, at least, no legal ones. But something strange happened that morning. A guard, Officer Hale, noticed a prisoner pacing nervously near his cell door. The inmate wasn't known for trouble. He wasn't part of any gang. He quietly served his time and stayed out of drama. But today, his hands shook. He looked pale. His eyes kept darting toward the hallway camera. Hale stopped. Watched. Then the inmate whispered, "I need to talk, before someone gets killed." Hale froze. That was the kind of sentence that changed investigations. He ordered the inmate to step back, then called for a supervisor. Minutes later, the prisoner was escorted to a small interview room, no windows, just a table, a chair, and a single buzzing light overhead. The inmate swallowed hard and said something that made both officers instantly alert. What happened last night wasn't an accident. Someone inside helped set it up. A guard. An inside man. That was always the nightmare scenario, and the reason contraband operations were so hard to stop. Drones, mail, visitors, those were external threats. But when a staff member was involved, the entire system was compromised. The inmate took a deep breath and continued. "I know who's been bringing the phones and drugs in. And I know when the next drop is coming." The supervisor stiffened. "Who?" But before the inmate could speak, the room's radio cracked to life. "Code blue in cell block C. Officers respond immediately." The supervisor cursed. Something big was happening, again. He told the inmate, "Stay here. Don't move," then rushed out with Hale. The inmate sat alone. Hands trembling. Heart pounding. He had finally decided to talk, to expose the corruption that had turned the prison into a smuggling pipeline, and now chaos had erupted again. When Hale reached cell block C, he found inmates pounding on their doors and shouting, faces pressed against windows. Inside one of the cells, an inmate lay on the floor, unconscious. A crumpled plastic baggie was beside him, filled with blue pills. Another overdose. Another package. Another sign the contraband pipeline was still active. But there was something even worse. This inmate wasn't supposed to have access to drugs. He was in a restricted unit, one of the hardest places to sneak anything into. And yet, the drugs were here. Which meant the inmate informant was probably right. Someone on staff was helping. Someone with keys and access? Someone who could walk anywhere without being searched. Hale felt his stomach twist. Because he knew exactly which guard had been on duty the last 3 nights. And he had noticed something. That guard always volunteered for the late shift. Always lingered near the loading dock. Always kept his jacket pockets unusually full. Hale turned to his supervisor with a quiet, dark realization. "We need to check the staff entry point. Now." The supervisor didn't respond, just nodded and moved fast. As they approached the staff corridor, Hale noticed the security locker, the one where guards stored personal items, slightly open. Inside, tucked behind a folded jacket, was a small black phone. A burner. And taped to the underside of the metal shelf? A SIM card. Prison cash notes. And a hand-drawn map of the yard showing drone drop zones. Hale felt a chill run down his back. They had caught a dirty officer. Someone tied to the smuggling ring. Someone whose next move could tear the prison apart. And just as Hale reached in to grab the evidence, the alarm suddenly switched to code red. Staff emergency. Officer in danger. A voice crackled over the radio. "Officer down in the warehouse. Repeat, officer down." And Hale's heart dropped. The warehouse was exactly where the corrupt guard usually worked. Something was happening, fast, dangerous, and out of control. And the truth was finally exploding into the open. The warehouse sat at the far edge of the prison grounds, a long gray building where food, uniforms, cleaning supplies, and maintenance equipment were stored. Only a few officers had clearance to work there. Fewer had the freedom to be alone inside. As Hale sprinted toward the warehouse with 2 other officers, his mind raced. The evidence they just found, the burner phone, the SIM card, the hand-drawn map, pointed to one person. Officer Trent Wallace. A quiet man. Kept to himself. Hard worker. Never caused issues. But he also had debts. Family trouble. Rumors of gambling problems. Hale had noticed all of it, but never thought it would lead to this. When they reached the warehouse door, the lock was broken. Splintered wood. Fresh. Someone forced their way in. Hale's pulse kicked up. He pushed the door open, slowly. Inside, boxes were knocked over. Canned food spilled across the floor. Shelves looked like something had rammed into them. And in the middle of the aisle? A flashlight was rolling slowly in circles, its beam shaking across the walls. But no officer in sight. Hale raised his radio. "Dispatch, we're inside. The scene's a mess. looking for the downed officer now. They moved carefully, step by step, scanning corners, looking for movement. Then they saw him. Officer Wallace lay on the ground behind a stack of pallets, face down, motionless. One of the officers rushed to him, turning him over. Hale held his breath. A bruise covered the left side of Wallace's face. Not from a fall, from a punch. And beside him was a torn-open shipment box. Inside the box sat a bundle wrapped in black tape, the same type used for contraband packages dropped by drones. Only this time, the tape was already cut open. Inside the package were several small bags of meth pills, 2 mini smartphones, and a handwritten note. Hale picked up the note with a gloved hand. There were only 3 words. "You got sloppy." His stomach twisted. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a simple drug drop gone wrong. This was a message. Wallace groaned, barely conscious. Hale kneeled beside him. "Wallace, listen. Who did this?" Wallace blinked slowly, dazed. His lip was bleeding. His breathing uneven. But he managed to whisper. "I wasn't working alone." Then he coughed, winced, and whispered again. "They're watching, from inside." Hale's eyes widened. Inside? Inside where? Inside the warehouse? Inside the prison? Inside the staff ranks? Wallace coughed again, pointing weakly toward the office at the back of the warehouse. Hale turned, and saw the small office light on. Someone was in there. He motioned to the other officers. They approached quietly. Boots soft on the concrete. Weapons ready. When they reached the office door, they could hear something. A soft clicking. Like someone typing on a phone. Hale held up 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. He kicked the door open. And the room was empty. But the window was open. Curtains moving. Someone had escaped out the back window only seconds earlier. On the table, a phone vibrated, still unlocked. A burner. Just like the one in Wallace's locker. On the screen was a message thread. Dozens of texts. Plans. Payments. Drone schedules. Guard rotations. Names. And at the top of the thread? The contact name read, "The Warden." Hale stared at the screen. Heart pounding. Hands cold. If that contact name was real? If it wasn't a trick or a joke? Then the smuggling ring went far beyond Wallace. Far beyond a few dirty guards. It reached the very top of the prison. Before Hale could speak, another message popped up on the phone, right in front of him. Cleanup failed. Move to phase 2. No loose ends. The officers exchanged looks. Someone knew they had discovered everything. Someone was planning the next move. Something far bigger, and far more dangerous, was already in motion. And Hale realized something terrifying. Hale didn't waste a second. The message on the burner phone, "Move to phase 2. No loose ends," meant one thing. Someone was trying to destroy evidence, silence witnesses, and shut down the investigation before it ever reached them. The warehouse suddenly felt too quiet. Too still. Too dangerous. Hale grabbed the phone, tucked it into an evidence bag, and signaled his team to move. As they stepped outside, the prison grounds were eerily calm. Dusk had settled in, prison lights flickering across the yard. But something felt wrong, deeply wrong. Then the radio crackled. "Unit 3, report. Why are the cell doors in D block opening?" Hale froze. Cell doors don't just open. Not without authorization. Not without a staff member unlocking them. Not unless someone inside the control room triggers it. Hale shouted into his radio. "Lock it down. Lock every block down now." But the reply made his blood run cold. "We can't. The system isn't responding." Someone had overridden the electronic controls. Someone with clearance. Someone who knew the system from the inside. This wasn't just smuggling anymore. This was sabotage. They sprinted toward the main building. As they reached the hallway that led to D block, they heard it. Shouting. Metal echoing. Footsteps pounding. Inmates yelling over each other. And then, a fight. A big one. When Hale turned the corner, the scene exploded into view. Dozens of inmates were out of their cells, crowding the hallway. Some were running. Some pushing. Some trying to get away. Others charging forward as if searching for something, or someone. It wasn't a riot. Not yet. But it was the spark of one. Hale raised his voice. "Back in your cells. Move. Now." But the inmates didn't listen. They weren't looking at him. They were staring past him. Toward the stairwell. Hale followed their gaze. And saw an inmate stumbling out of the stairwell, clutching his stomach. Blood soaked through his shirt. His hands trembled. He collapsed to his knees and whispered. "They're coming, they said not to talk, they said everybody's a target." Then he fell face first onto the floor. One of the officers rushed to him. Another called for medical. But Hale's eyes were fixed on the stairwell. Because this wasn't random violence. This inmate wasn't caught in a fight. He'd been silenced. He was one of the prisoners who had worked around the warehouse, one of the inmates who handled supply deliveries. Someone didn't want him speaking. The officers formed a barrier to stop inmates from rushing the wounded man, but the hallway was becoming unstable, loud, crowded, dangerous. Suddenly, lights flickered overhead. Darkness swallowed the hallway for a split second. Then emergency lights snapped on, bathing everything in a red glow. Another officer came running, breathless. Control room is locked from the inside. Someone jammed the door. We can't get in. Hale's heart hammered. If the control room was in enemy hands, then cell doors could be opened. Cameras could be shut down. Alarms could be disabled. Guards could be trapped. Inmates could be targeted. This was Phase 2. A coordinated move to erase every loose end, including inmates and guards who knew the smuggling network. Hale yelled to his team. Secure the wounded and retreat. We're regrouping at the admin hallway. As they pulled back, inmates started backing away too, not attacking, but trying to escape the chaos. Red lights flashed. Sirens started. The prison shook with noise. When Hale finally reached the admin wing, he saw supervisors gathering. Some confused. Some scared. All overwhelmed. Then the warden walked in. Calm. Expressionless. Hands clasped behind his back. He surveyed the chaos through the glass window overlooking the yard. Then he turned to Hale and said, "Explain why my prison is falling apart." But Hale didn't speak. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because the warden wasn't looking at Hale. He was looking straight at the evidence bag in Hale's hand. The phone with the messages. And the moment the warden's eyes locked onto that phone, his face changed. Not surprised. Not confused. Not angry. But annoyed. As if something had inconvenienced him. Then the warden said quietly, too quietly, "Where did you get that?" And Hale realized something instantly, something terrifying. The warden wasn't asking because he didn't know what the phone contained. He was asking because he wanted to know how close the investigation had gotten to him. Before Hale could answer, a thunderous crash echoed through the admin hallway. An explosion of sound coming from the control room door. Someone was breaking in. Or breaking out. Phase 2 wasn't over. It had just begun. The crash from the control room hallway was so loud that the entire admin wing jumped. Officers scattered into defensive positions. Hale drew in a sharp breath. If the control room had been taken over, if someone inside was carrying out Phase 2, then whatever came next could determine the fate of the entire prison. The warden stepped forward slowly, hands behind his back again, expression unreadable. He looked more irritated than alarmed. Hale didn't like that. Not at all. Another crash hit. This time the control room door buckled inward. A metal bar clattered across the floor. Someone was trying to smash their way out. Someone desperate. Someone who knew time was running out. Move, Hale ordered his team. They advanced through the hallway as the red emergency lights flashed overhead. Alarms blared. Distant shouting echoed from multiple blocks. By the time they reached the control room corridor, the door was half smashed in. Wood split. Steel twisting apart. The small glass window was cracked from the inside. Hale signaled the team to stand ready. Then he called out, "Control room. This is Officer Hale. Step away from the door and show your hands." No response. Just breathing, heavy, ragged, panicked, coming from behind the door. Another smash. The door swung open an inch. A hand appeared, gloved, gripping a metal rod. Then the door burst fully open. And there he was. Officer Trent Wallace. The same officer they had found injured in the warehouse. The same officer who said he wasn't working alone. But now he was standing upright. Breathing hard. Jaw clenched. Face bruised but determined. The other officers aimed their weapons, shouting, "Stop! Hands up! Don't move!" Wallace didn't listen. Instead, he stepped into the hallway, holding the metal rod like a weapon. His eyes scanned the hallway, then locked directly onto the warden. Hale's stomach dropped. This wasn't a coincidence. The warden took a slow step back. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't panicking. He was calculating. Hale shouted again. "Wallace, drop the weapon. Now!" Wallace ignored him. He raised the rod, not toward the officers, but toward the warden. And he shouted something that silenced the entire hallway. "Tell them the truth." Every officer froze. Hale's heart pounded. Wallace's voice cracked as he yelled again. "Tell them who made me do it." The warden didn't blink. Didn't move. Didn't even look nervous. He simply said, in a cold and controlled voice, "You need to calm down, Trent." Wallace let out a shaky, broken laugh. "Calm down? After everything you made me bring in? After all the drops? All the payments? All the threats? Officers exchanged stunned looks. Hale felt the weight of every word. Wallace stepped forward. He pointed at the warden. "They think I'm the mastermind," he shouted. "But you." He didn't get to finish. Because at that exact moment, the sprinkler system exploded into life, spraying freezing mist through the hallway. Lights flickered. The fire alarm blasted. Everyone ducked, momentarily blinded. And in that split second of confusion, Wallace lunged. Not toward the officers. Not toward an exit. But toward the warden. Hale reacted instantly. He tackled Wallace mid-charge, slamming him to the wet floor. The metal rod clattered away. Officers restrained Wallace, pinning him down as he thrashed and yelled. "He's lying. He's in it. The warden is in it. Check his office. Check his safe." The warden stepped back, water running off his uniform, expression stiff. Other officers looked at him. Suspicion growing. Questions forming. Hale stood slowly, soaked, breathing hard. He looked the warden dead in the eyes. "Sir," he said firmly, "we're going to need access to your office." Everything stopped. Every sound in the hallway faded under the weight of that one request. The warden stared at Hale. Silent. Still. Cold. Then he said quietly, "Absolutely not." And that was the moment Hale knew. This went deeper. Much deeper. Deeper than smuggling. Deeper than contraband. Deeper than one dirty guard. Because a truly innocent man, a man with nothing to hide, would have said one simple thing. Search it. But the warden didn't. And that refusal was louder than any confession. Before anyone could speak again, another alarm sounded across the prison. A new one. One that chilled every officer to the bone. Warning, perimeter breach. Outside movement detected. The contraband ring wasn't done. Phase 2 was still in motion. And the warden was at the center of it. The moment the perimeter breach alarm echoed through the prison, every officer froze. Perimeter breaches weren't common. They were planned. They meant someone outside was working together with someone inside. Hale tightened his grip on the evidence bag. The warden's refusal to allow his office to be searched suddenly made everything clearer, sharper, deadlier. He turned. Locked down the admin wing. No one leaves, not staff, not inmates, not the warden. Gasps. Whispers. Some officers hesitated. No one had ever ordered a lockdown on the warden's presence before. The warden's jaw tightened. "You're out of line, Officer Hale." But Hale didn't blink. "Sir, with respect, the breach, the override of the control room, the contraband pipeline, this all leads back to someone with high-level access. You refused a search. That alone justifies detainment." The warden opened his mouth. Then stopped. Because outside the narrow window, headlights flashed against the far fence line. A truck. Unmarked. Stopping beside a maintenance gate. A gate the warden had a personal key for. Hale's blood ran cold. "Teams 1 and 2, move," he shouted. Officers sprinted down the corridor toward the yard exit. The red emergency lights drenched the walls. The rain from the sprinklers still dripping from their uniforms. Boots pounding against the concrete. As Hale and 3 officers burst into the yard, they saw it. 2 figures at the maintenance gate. One was dressed in black, carrying a duffel bag. The other wore a prison officer's jacket. The duffel bag dropped. Phones spilled out. Small packages wrapped in tape. Batteries. SIM cards. Exactly the type of contraband the ring had been moving. The officer in the jacket turned. And Hale recognized him instantly. Officer Ramirez. A senior guard. Trusted. Friendly. Always first to volunteer for overtime. One of the warden's favorites. Ramirez froze as Hale aimed and shouted, "Don't move." But the man beside him bolted toward the truck. Ramirez followed. Shots fired, warning rounds. The sound exploded through the yard. The truck engine roared to life. Ramirez grabbed the door handle. But Hale tackled him before he could climb in. Officers swarmed him, pinning him to the ground as the truck sped off into the darkness, crashing through a weakened section of the outer fence. Ramirez screamed, "This wasn't my plan. You don't understand. None of this stops without him." Hale leaned over him. "Without who?" Ramirez spat blood and whispered, "The warden. He runs everything. We only follow orders." Inside the admin hall, the warden stood perfectly still. Quiet. Expression steady, almost empty. Hale marched him back inside. "Sir, you are under investigation. And until this is resolved, you are no longer in command." The warden said nothing. He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He didn't protest. He simply turned toward Hale with a hollow smile and said, "You're too late." Those words hung in the air, heavy and final. But they weren't true. Over the next 48 hours, the investigation team combed through the warden's office, his computer, his safe, his personal accounts. Then the evidence poured out. Cash deposits matching the dates of drone drops. Encrypted messages coordinating with outside smugglers. Manipulated rosters giving corrupt officers control of blind spots. Access logs proving he personally unlocked gates during multiple contraband deliveries. The warden had built a criminal empire inside the prison walls. A system of bribery, coercion, and silence. And for years, nobody questioned it. Until Hale did. In the end, the truth didn't come from the most violent inmate. Or the most feared gang. Or a secret tunnel. Or a drone buzzing over the yard. It came from the one thing corruption fears most. A single person willing to say, something isn't right. The warden was arrested. Several officers were indicted. The smuggling ring collapsed. And the prison finally began to rebuild, brick by brick, trust by trust, policy by policy. But this story isn't about one prison. It isn't about one corrupt warden. It's about how contraband truly gets inside, far from the myths. Not just drones. Not just visitors. Not just mail. But through people, the ones sworn to protect, the ones who stop being guardians and start becoming gatekeepers for crime. This case proved something bigger. Contraband doesn't enter a prison because the walls are weak. It enters because the wrong people hold the keys. And as long as there are profits to be made, danger to be hidden, and silence to be bought, the battle to keep contraband out will always start on the inside.